Center for Indonesian Visual Art Studies, or CIVAS, was initiated by the Aesthetics and the Sciences of Art Research Group, or ASARG, Faculty of Art and Design, Bandung Institute of Technology. Founded in 2017, with support from Research Community Service and Innovation Program, which was started as a repository of digital art archives based on Indonesian art history. CIVAS has a mission to become a center of excellence on visual art studies and research to support the Indonesian art scene to thrive. We have already digitized and collected a variety of historical archives such as artworks, old photos, documents, drawing, teaching materials, posters, and so on related to Bandung School tracing the pioneers of visual art teaching at ITB. In terms of archiving and collecting, CIVAS is using support from all researchers at ASARG. We led a documentation project called Bandung School Documentation Project in 2018. The materials will become our special collection. We divide the collection into 3 periods: 1940s, 1950s, and 1950s until 1960s. We also plan to expand the project to collect the Indonesian visual art archives through international networking. We plan to open for public in 2025. It is in line with ITB's plan to improve its international reputation in 2025. CIVAS focuses the collection on the development of Bandung schools, now known as the Faculty of Art and Design, Bandung Institute of Technology. However, we will see a more significant intersection of Bandung and Indonesian art from that collection. In the future, we will be targeting this broader context of studies. CIVAS has 2 main functions, which are preservation and dissemination.
Archiving activity. This event are supported by National Research and Innovation Agency of Indonesia through 2021 National Research Priority Grant. We also would like to invite you to visit the first exhibition on their platform this November. Make sure to follow their Instagram and find the update there. My name is Adira. I am a student in the undergraduate program in visual art at the Faculty of Art and Design, Bandung Institute of Technology. I am also a CIVAS intern for this year. Furthermore, I will be the host of this event. Without further ado, I will attentively welcome Dr. Irma Damayanti, Ethics and the Science of Art Research Group, Faculty of Art and Design, Bandung Institute of Technology, to deliver her welcoming speech. Ibu Irma, waktu dan layar.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. evening and also good morning. The Honorable Dean and members of Faculty of Visual Art and Design ITB, the Honorable Miss Emily Zinger, Associate Professor Dr. Maki Fukuoka, Miss Jillian Park, Miss Chuong Daifo, Miss Kiki Rizky Sutisna Putri, and Miss Ardana Riswari as a moderator of the discussion. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the virtual roundtable, a closing program of CIVAS, Center for Indonesian Visual Art Studies, ITB, in 2021. It is both a privilege and an honor to welcome you to the discussion program. On behalf of Aesthetics and Sciences of Art Research Group ITB, which focuses on area that encompass theoretical, historical, and interdisciplinary art studies, I would like to extend my heartfelt welcome. We are delighted to have you with us to participate and share in our program. Thank you for joining. We are also very grateful to the Faculty of Visual Art and Design ITB and Institute of Research and Community Service ITB for their tremendous support they have provided. And to the steering committee, particularly Ibu Kiki Rizky Sutisna Putri as a chairman of CIVAS, Center for Indonesian Visual Art Studies ITB, and teams whose members have put together an engaging program. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, the wonderful thing about today's discussion is the international perspective and experiences the four representatives of archiving institutions in Asia, Europe, and America will bring to this discussion. The discussion theme is archive digitization in the role of knowledge preservation and dissemination in art institutions. I am grateful to the many experts who have joined to share their knowledge today, especially to our honorable guest speakers. Ms. Emily Zinger from Southeast Asia Digital Library, Cornell University. Mr. Roshan Mishra from Kathmandu University Art Archive. Associate Professor Dr. Maki Fukuoka and Jillian Park from School of Fine Art, History, and Cultural Studies, Leeds University. And
recording
last
in
but
progress.
not least, Ms. Chuong Daifo from Asian Art Archive. Ladies and gentlemen, discussions such as this program provide a valuable opportunity and is expected to bring up ideas that are able to be an example and inspiration for CIVAS in carrying out its function and responsibilities in terms of knowledge preservation and dissemination through future archiving activities. Let me now close by wishing you a delightful and stimulating discussion. I'm sure you will have fruitful deliberation and productive discussion. Thank you for your participation and your kind attention. I look forward to learning about the outcome. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you.
What a wonderful speech, Ibu. Ladies and gentlemen, Kusmara, Dean of the Faculty of Art and Design, Bandung Institute of Technology, to deliver his speech, and at the same time, also officially open the event. Kepada Pak Rikrik, waktu dan layar kami persilakan.
Terima kasih, Sadira. Hello, everyone. Good evening, Indonesia time. It's an honor to be joining you all today, starting the opening of these roundtable discussions. First of all, on behalf of Faculty of Art and Design, I would like to thank and welcome you for joining this event representatives of institutions that have long experience in the field of archiving. Emily Zinger from Southeast Asia Digital Library, Cornell University, Roshan Mushra from Kathmandu University Art Archive, Maki Fukuoka and Jillian Park from Leeds University, Chuang Dai Fo from Asia Art Archive, and Kiki Rizky Sutisna Putri from CIVAS Faculty of Art and Design. And also colleagues from Faculty of Art and Design, thank you for joining this roundtable discussions. As part of our series Historical Journey, Faculty of Art and Design, which was founded in 1947, is aware that there are so many archives which have been archived for a long time or which we continue to collect who want to be accessed by public, especially many researchers. I would like to thank the Center of Indonesia Visual Art Studies, or CIVAS team, which, if I'm not mistaken, started 4 years ago, who have tried to quickly respond to the needs of digital archive, digitalizing recent archive, and creates activities to add new collections. We really support the proposals that have been submitted, and I think with the support of the new facilities that we have prepared, hopefully CIVAS activities will be more productive in the transformations of our digital archive. Of course, archiving is an important part of developing knowledge. We are also aware of the digital culture nowadays. The world information technology is now a major part of the information exchange process. We would like to be the active part of this exchange. So we are grateful to the CIVAS team for their initiative to continue to develop our archiving center. We hope our relatively young CIVAS programs will be enriched by the experts in these discussions, and we also want to immediately be part of being able to contribute to the data and archive network, both for us in Indonesia as well as research activities between institutions and between countries. I believe that the result of these discussions will further encourage our plan to accelerate the development of the Center for Conservation and Cultural Studies at the ITB Faculty of Art and Design, where CIVAS is part of it. Finally, thank you again to all those who have been involved in this event. Good evening and have a fruitful discussion. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Pak. We hope that CIVAS contribution will be beneficial to the faculty. We will work hard for sure. Before we start the first session, we please all Zoom participants to open the camera to get a photo session. 1, 2, 3. Okay, thank you. And I will handling the event to Ibu Ardana Riswari as moderator for the discussion. Saya persilakan.
Hello, thank you very much, Sadira. Hello, everyone. My name is Ardana Riswari, and I'm a member of the Aesthetics and the Sciences of Art Research Group, as well as the Faculty of Art and Design from Institut Teknologi Bandung. It is such an exciting event here in Bandung tonight and all over the world, I guess, in the morning, in the afternoon, and I might say quite historical as well, as foundations are being laid by the Faculty of Art and Design, Institut Teknologi Bandung, through the Center for Indonesian Visual Art Studies, CIVAS, to show our commitment, as the Dean have said, in conserving and preserving knowledge about the Indonesian visual arts. And I'm beyond honored to be here and serve as the moderator for this roundtable discussion. Without further ado, because we do have quite a bit of chunk of the introduction part, I'd like to introduce you to our first panelist in the discussion, Emily Zinger. So Emily Zinger serves as the Southeast Asia Digital Librarian for Cornell University. In this role, she is project manager for the Southeast Asia Digital Library, a cooperative project of the Committee on Research Materials on Southeast Asia. She also sits on the editorial board of the Journal of Critical Digital Librarianship. She has a master's on information studies from McGill University and a bachelor's in both psychology and English from the College of William and Mary. So hello, Emily, are you there? Good morning to you.
Hello, thank you. Yes, the sun is just rising here in Ithaca, New York.
Wow. So it's 7:20 in the morning, right? In New York?
8:20 in the morning. But
oh,
it's
8:20.
it's winter
yeah.
now. So
Yeah, that's true. Okay, all right. Thank you very much. So you'll be our first panelist. I'm handing it over to you for your presentation.
All right. Can everyone see my slides?
Yes.
Yes, we already see.
Wonderful. Thank you. So hello, everyone, and thank you so much to CIVAS for this opportunity to speak with you today. My name is Emily Zinger. I'm project manager for the Southeast Asia Digital Library, or SEADL, as we call it, SEADL. A quick outline before we begin. We'll start by introducing SEADL, its mission and its history. I'll then share some of the benefits of our model of cooperative digital librarianship. I'll explore some of SEADL's art collections that I think are especially relevant to our audience today. I'll take you on a tour through some of SEADL's other collections that are from or about Indonesia. And lastly, I want to share with you the future directions of this project. The Southeast Asia Digital Library is a free and open access repository of resources from and about Southeast Asia. The project began in 2006, and it now holds over 9,000 items, including books, oral histories, manuscripts, and more. The library is hosted online by Northern Illinois University and cooperatively managed by a consortium of 16 other institutions in the United States called Cormosia. Each of these institutions has a significant physical collection of Southeast Asia library materials. The consortium includes Cornell University, where I work, as well as the Library of Congress, Ohio University, Yale, Harvard, Berkeley, just to name a few. SEADL primarily serves to support research in Southeast Asian studies, but as a project, we also seek to connect with users who are interested in their own cultural heritage. SEADL was founded on the value of collaboration. As I mentioned, 17 institutions collectively make up the consortium that manages and contributes to SEADL. Each institution brings to the table its own unique set of skills and expertise. The field of Southeast Asian studies is incredibly wide. It encompasses numerous disciplines, many different cultures, and even more languages. No single institution has the resources or the knowledge alone to support research across these diverse areas. But by working as a group, we can pool our knowledge to build collections from around the region on many different topics. Resource sharing here also applies to physical resources, right? The items that fill SEADL. Just as each librarian has their own expertise, each library often has a specific collecting strength. And SEADL brings those strengths together to build a well-rounded offering of digital collections. And lastly, SEADL enables members to share digital space on our platform. Each institution has to serve the needs of all of their students and faculties and all of their research interests. This means that Southeast Asian materials cannot always be first in line for digitization. For example, at Cornell, we have an internationally significant Southeast Asia collection. But these materials still have to get in line with all of the other materials at our university before they can be put online. This challenge is even greater for our consortium members whose Southeast Asia collections are much smaller than ours here at Cornell. But our cooperative model at CIDL creates an environment where items from Southeast Asia are always prioritized for digitization. And even when Southeast Asia collections are digitized at their home libraries, these digital materials risk becoming incredibly siloed within their websites. Siloing occurs when items and their data become trapped within a single institution's website. Like small fish in a big pond, these items can be incredibly difficult to search for, and they're often not found unless a user already knows that they exist, right? There's no spontaneous discovery, or if it is, it's very difficult. Siloed items are disconnected from similar archival items that are stored elsewhere on the internet. So even when a user does uncover a collection at Cornell, they might have no idea that there's a complementary collection at the University of Michigan that would also support their research. I'll show you an example. Let's say you're looking for historic photographs on Indonesia. Cornell Digital Collections has a selection of such images of Sumatra in our Kroc Asia Rare Materials Archive. And the digital collections at University of Hawaii at Manoa also has some slides of Indonesia in their image collections. And there's a small grouping of images in the Harvard digital collections as well on Indonesia. But if you find one of these items, there's no way to know that the others exist. They're not linked. These are just 3 examples, right? There's even more out there. But it demonstrates how similar items that might all answer the same research need are just scattered across the internet. CIDL solves this problem through aggregation. Users don't need to search across 17 different library catalogs to find similar resources. Instead, they can explore our single platform to locate items that would otherwise be disconnected from each other. This collaboration eases the research process for our users and supports richer, stronger scholarship in Southeast Asian studies. I now want to take you on a tour of some CIDL collections to give you a better idea of our scope of work and also which materials might be useful for your own research. We have several collections that document the art scene and art history in Southeast Asia. Perhaps most prominently is our Art in the Age of the Doi Moi collection. These materials present the history of Hanoi's first non-governmental art space, Salon Natasha. The collection includes a mixture of materials, including photographs that you see here, depicting exhibition openings and daily life of the gallery, as well as archival materials and ephemera such as posters, invitations, speeches, even artist CVs. And together, all of these items paint a full picture of the activities of Salon Natasha during the renovation period of Vietnamese history. It's important to note that this collection also contains digital surrogates of the artworks themselves. In a physical archive, it would be logistically difficult to view multiple large paintings at the same time. These items would take up significant space in a reading room, right? You can't easily lay them all out and analyze them at once. But this barrier is overcome in a digital environment. Our users can scroll through these paintings one after another, viewing an artist's entire exhibition as if they were walking through Salon Natasha. A digital environment also allows us to preserve intangible heritage, or representations and expressions of a culture that can't be easily captured in a physical form or preserved on a traditional library shelf. An example is our Mandalay Marionettes Theater Puppet Show, which documents the art of traditional Burmese puppetry, a single instance of this art. I have to admit, this is one of my favorite collections. There we go, thank you. I also want to touch on the unique power that digital libraries have to preserve art in danger of environmental degradation or even human destruction. A prime example is CIDL's collections of Laos temple murals. So here you can see two versions of a mural. The image on the left is a painting from 1938, and the Buddhist temple where it existed was actually demolished in the year 2000. The image on the right is of the recreation of this painting in the newly constructed building in 2010. These collections include not just details of the destroyed and repainted murals, but images of the temple interiors, allowing CIDL users to orient themselves within buildings that no longer exist, to analyze these spaces as they existed across time before and after destruction. It's too late, of course, for that first mural itself to be preserved, but our partners saved this cultural heritage through the digital surrogates that were painstakingly created, described, and then organized in CIDL. We also have a number of collections that directly relate to Indonesia, and I'll scan through them quickly now for you. The Indonesian Illuminated Manuscripts collection documents the history of writing traditions from this country through images of early palm leaf manuscripts, handwritten documents, and early printed materials. Indonesian manuscripts are extremely underrepresented in public and private collections, let alone in digital collections. This means that scholars and anyone else who is interested has very limited access to these resources. The CIDL collection here is just a small step towards solving that problem. On the Record, Indonesian Literary Figures contains interviews with and raw footage of 26 Indonesian authors, poets, and playwrights, including Sapardi Djoko Damono, seen here. All of these interviews are in Indonesian, and they offer a unique perspective of the people behind Indonesia's rich literature. The Indonesian Television Archive has full episodes from a number of TV shows such as Republik Mimpi and others from MQTV, an Islamic local television station from the Bandung area. Episodes from shows like Jalan Jalan Jajan, the show pictured on the right here, as well as other talk shows, news programs, and just examples of popular culture, all give a glimpse into Indonesian life in the early 2000s. CIDL also houses some collections that contain materials from the general region of Southeast Asia. Selections from the Don V. Hart collection at Northern Illinois University, for example, includes a variety of historic maps of Southeast Asia. So on the left here, you can see this Dutch East India Company map of Java from 1778. And on the right, we actually have a Ptolemaic map from 1561. Lastly, the UKM NIU Digitization project has a collection of scanned books that do not have copyright issues. Some of these are from and about Southeast Asia as pictured here. And this is just a brief overview of our Indonesia collections, but I hope that it gives you a sense of what CIDL offers, how we bring our mission to life through our collections. We have other collections, many others that I have not been able to touch on today, but I do encourage you to explore them on your own. That is the whole reason why we do this work, to make these items available. I want to spend my last few minutes discussing CIDL's future. We recently received a significant grant from the Henry Luce Foundation that is allowing us to not only add several new collections to our repository, but more importantly, to plan for a sustainable future. One of the main challenges of managing a digital library is ensuring project longevity. Technology changes fast, and to stay relevant, to stay useful to researchers, a repository must match that pace of growth and innovation. This takes a great deal of expertise and time and money, and that can be difficult for libraries and archives. But thanks to the Henry Luce Foundation, behind the scenes right now, we are building a completely modernized and redesigned platform that will better fill the needs of CEDAW users today. I can't share much publicly yet, it's all still very much in progress, but stay tuned for the launch in fall 2022 when we will unveil the brand new CEDAW. Just as a sneak peek on this slide, you can see our newly designed logo. As I mentioned, we're also adding new collections. On the slide here, you can see examples from our newest project, Endangered Cham Manuscripts of Vietnam. Soon, you will also be able to find on our site the Thai Film Archive, a collection of previously undigitized movies from Thailand, as well as papers from the Radio Archive of the United Nations Transitional Authority in Cambodia, and more. A lot is changing for CEDAW right now. It's an exciting time to be a part of this work, to help CEDAW better position itself to share, preserve, and promote the cultural heritage of Southeast Asia for all who seek it. Thank you for your attention today. If you have any questions about CEDAW or digital librarianship in general, please send me an email. I'm happy to answer all of your questions, and I look forward to hearing from the rest of our speakers today.
Thank you very much, Emily. It's so very interesting, the idea of creating a network of digital archive centers, and also it undoubtedly has a lot of potentials. Digitization at CEDAW seems to also be an effective way to preserve knowledge and conserve some of the works otherwise unable to be conserved physically, as what you said. So thank you very much for the presentation. Next, we have another panelist from a different part of the world that I'd like to introduce. Her name is Chong Dai. She is a researcher at Asia Art Archive, where she supervises archival collections from Southeast Asia. Her writing can be found in publications from MoMA Warsaw, which is forthcoming. After all, Institut National d'Histoire de l'Art, Moderna Galleria, and Taipei Fine Arts Museum. Recent curatorial projects include Form Color Actions, sketchbooks and notebooks of Li Wen, and Ho Tu Nyen's The Critical Dictionary of Southeast Asia, Volume 1, G for Ghost Writers. And she is also a former Mellon postdoctoral fellow at MIT, as well as a recipient of grants and fellowships from Asian Cultural Council, Fulbright Program, University of California Pacific Rim Research Program, and the U.S. National Endowment for the Humanities. So I'd like to greet Chong Dai. Are you there?
I am.
Hi.
Thank you
Are you
very
still
much
in Europe?
Yes, I'm in Paris right now for a research residency.
Yeah, so good afternoon to you then, yeah? Is it lunchtime?
Yes, it's a little past, or it's almost 3 o'clock in the afternoon here.
Okay, all right. Okay, so if you're ready for your presentation, I'd like to give you the screen.
Thank you, and I'd like to thank CIVAS for this invitation, and especially Kiki. I will share my screen now. I really enjoyed listening to Emily's presentation, and I think it would be quite interesting for us during the discussion to talk about some of the overlaps between the collections. So for my presentation, I'll talk about Asia Art Archive, our research collections, and I'll also talk about some of the questions that we've gotten over the years about our process. Asia Art Archive was founded in the year 2000 in Hong Kong. It started as a small library in response to what our co-founder Claire Sue identified as a dearth of archival material for research on contemporary art in Asia. As you can see, we have a physical library, which is in our office in Hong Kong. But we also have a body of archival collections, which are available on the internet. And currently we have 46 collections. We call them research collections because it's the research team that brings them in and supervises those collections. They come from the collections of art historians, writers, artists, curators, artists, organizers, artist-run organizations, and alternative spaces. And in many cases, art historians are also teachers and artists themselves, and so there's a lot of overlap. People often ask us how we choose which collections to bring in. Over the years, there were various researchers who identified certain gaps in the archival material that was available on contemporary art in Asia. And so based on that experience, we identified what became kind of 7 primary content priorities for us. They're in no particular order here. It's art writing, art pedagogy, women in the arts, innovation through tradition, exhibition histories, complex geographies, and performance art. And as you can see, we do have a kind of a table of contents webpage. And so if you go to that webpage, you can click on any of these collections. And I just want to go through a few collections to give you a sense of what we do have. We have several collections from Southeast Asia. I want to just note that our collections, the material tends to come from the second half of the 20th century because our priority is recent art in Asia. But we're also building collections, looking into the prospect of collecting material on modern art. And in fact, some of our collections do have material from what would be considered the modern period in parts of Asia. And that would be mainly from the 50s and the 60s and even up into the 70s, depending on the historical context. And so you can see here the Roberto Chabet Archive and the Manila Artist Run Spaces Archive. These are 2 of the 3 collections we have on contemporary art in the Philippines. These 2, in addition to the Green Papaya Art Projects Archive, would give you material on practically every contemporary artist who has worked and is working in Manila. Roberto Chabet, some people see him as the father of conceptual art in the Philippines. He was a very important curator and the first director of the Cultural Center of the Philippines. He was also a very important teacher. He taught for about 30 years at the University of the Philippines College of Fine Arts. And in that time, he taught about 2 generations of artists. And so all of the major artists that you would know of who are working today, either have known him or were his students. So here, this collection is important not only because it has material about his own practice as an artist, but it also has material on his curatorial practice. He was known for curating exhibitions of his students' works. And so it's through that material that we can see a lot of the early works of artists who are known today. And you'll see a lot of that material in the last folder here, the University of the Philippines College of Fine Arts folder. The Manila Artist Run Spaces Archive is a collection of material from 6 artist run spaces. What's unique about this collection is all of the artists who ran these spaces were students of Roberto Chabet. One of the things he did as a teacher was that he had his students create their own exhibitions. So they had to do everything from organizing to taking care of the reception to installation, to receiving guests. And a lot of his students talked about how that gave them both the experience and the confidence to run their own spaces and to curate their own exhibitions when they came out of college. And you can see proof of that here in some of the spaces that are contained in the Manila Artist Run Spaces Archive. Emily had talked about the Salon Natasha archive. This is one of our collections from Vietnam. We worked on this with Nora Taylor, who is an alumni of Cornell. And so I think Cornell probably has that collection because of Nora Taylor's connection to the university. Another collection that we have on contemporary art in Vietnam is Blue Space, which is or was a space that was active in Saigon in the 1990s and early 2000s. And so between these two spaces, you can get a sense of the development of contemporary art in Vietnam and how they develop differently in Hanoi versus in Saigon. Some of the questions that we've gotten over the years, has to do with why we chose to digitize our archival collections versus holding them as in physical form. There are a variety of reasons, and the decisions that we made are not necessarily the best decisions for each organization. And so I think one of the things is to consider the specific context for your institution in terms of what are the priorities of the institution and what are the specific physical and historical context for creating your own institutional archives. Some of the things that we had to consider were the cost of storage. In Hong Kong, real estate is very expensive. It's among the most expensive real estate in the world. And so it wasn't financially feasible for us to collect physical material and to store them in the long term. Of course, there's also the cost of technology. Over the years, of course, we've had to invest a lot in technology. And as everyone knows, you also have to invest in upgrades. And so these are costs to consider. Another factor to consider, of course, is conservation. And this is a real problem if you're in Southeast Asia, where heat and humidity are year-round. Conservation also has to do, of course, with digital material. We found, for example, with material that is in PDF form, we now are converting it to PDF-A. So Adobe has a particular version of the PDF that is archival. And we have found that that may be better for us in terms of being able to hold that digital material in the long term. Some people talk about the environmental impact of physical material, but of course, internet infrastructure also has its own environmental costs. Human resources, as we have grown over the years, we have invested in, of course, an expansion of our staff. And so, some of the things that when we first only had a physical library in the beginning, we didn't need to have an IT team. But as we moved towards having digital collections, we hired people who are experts in IT to support our website needs. But of course, having a digital platform can give access to that material to a wider range of people around the world. The other thing we found is if you digitize the material, the physical collections can remain in country. So often what we do is when we do digitize a collection, we work with the depositor to find an institutional home in the country in which they reside so that that physical collection can remain in their community. Like Emily said, AAA is also very interested in collaborations and sharing of resources. Sometimes this means working with another institution to digitize that material, and we would keep one copy of the digital collection and the other institution would keep another copy. of that. And that allows us both to share the resources and also share the material. What is our process? Our process is we have to evaluate what is in the collection. Yeah, and so it could be a variety of born digital material, such as photographs, videos, or other types of documents. Of course, oftentimes it also includes a lot of physical material. And if it's analog photographs, slides, negatives, AV, all of that has to be digitized. We don't have the expertise to necessarily digitize AV material because we don't have those resources. And so we either outsource it or we find an institution or organization that can help us with that material. Analog photographs, slides, and negatives are easier, because we do have copy stands and high resolution flatbed scanners in-house that can be done, or we can find organizations that can do that. A problem that any archivist would encounter would be damaged material. Right? So for example, for us, when we were working on the Green Papaya Art Projects archive, last year they had a serious fire and it burned or damaged a portion of the material. And so we worked with them to find institutions that could help to save that material temporarily and digitize it. But this is just something to consider when you work on any archive, and especially in a humid environment like Southeast Asia. Another question that we have been working on and that other organizations have asked us about is, do you digitize emails? Or I'm sorry, do you collect emails and social media? This is something that we are exploring. And this is one of the open source software that we're looking at. It's called EPAD. It comes from Stanford University. It's available for free. And this allows you to mass ingest emails and then to organize them in a way that viewers would only see the metadata, and that if they want to see specific emails, they would have to make individual requests, and we would look at those requests before approving them. And so this allows for privacy, and so any kind of private information in the emails would be protected. Processing of the material, going from the actual physical and digital material, bringing it into our collection and then making it available on the internet is a very time-consuming process that involves primarily 3 teams. So I'm part of the research team. Each of the researchers oversees certain collections. I supervise the collections that come from Southeast Asia, but we all also work with our colleagues on the collections team and the IT team. When you look at each record, you'll see that there's a lot of information, a lot of annotations. That is done and supervised by the research team. We usually have someone called a project researcher who does the annotation. That person would be familiar with that collection of material. And then after the annotations are done and fact-checked, they're ingested into our database. And along the way, there are many IT technical questions that we have to rely on our collections team and our IT team colleagues to help us with. And just very quickly, always bring in the collections. The research team is also visible. We do it through exhibition making and can be at other than museums and at other venues. And here I just want to end very quickly to say, one of the programs that we just started is Art Schools of Asia, where we're using some of the material from our archives. And for one of the workshops, we've invited Kiki and her colleagues to present material from CIVAS as part of our session on art schools in Indonesia. And we're really excited about that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the presentation and for the introduction to Asia Art Archives, Chongdai. It was very interesting to see all the collections, as also how systematical the work has been done in AAA. And you have also touched on a very important issue on the dilemma of storage, physical versus digital, which later on I'd like to elaborate during the discussion. But I believe we are going to have a short break now before continuing to other panelists for introduction and the discussion at the end of the introductions, of course. So I will hand over to Sadira.
Okay, thank you, Bu Ari. We will have a 15 minutes break while I will let you to watch and observe this beautiful yet very informative graphic recording of the previous session. It is delivered to you by our talented Mbak Riri Royanto. See you in 15 minutes. Bye. Welcome back to the second session of today's event. Without further ado, I will give the session to Ibu Ardana Riswari. Please, Ibu.
Thank you very much, Sadira. We're going to continue with more introductions of our panelists before we start the discussion at the end of this introduction sessions. Next, I'd like to introduce Dr. Maki Fukuoka and Dr. Gilpart. Maki Fukuoka received her PhD from the Department of Art History at the University of Chicago in 2006. From then to 2012, she taught at the Department of Asian Studies at the University of Michigan, Ann Arbor, where she was tenured. Since then, she has been teaching at the School of Fine Art, History of Art and Cultural Studies, University of Leeds. Her research has long focused on histories of photography and Japanese visual culture. Her first book, The Premise of Fidelity, Science, Visuality, and Representing the Real in 19th Century Japan, was published in 2012 by the Stanford University Press. It explores both her interest in photography and alternative mode of knowledge production. A new translation book from Japanese to English, Antiquarians of 19th Century Japan, is forthcoming from the Getty Research Institute in January 2022. Art and curating. She has worked as director of Pavilion from 2012 to 2017, a contemporary arts commissioning organization based in Leeds. And in 2013 to 2015, she led on a major Creative Europe project titled Retreating Ahead, Curatorial and Artistic Explorations in partnership with CAC Vilnius, Lithuania, and Kunstverein Harburger, histories of art that address the entanglements of gender, race, class, and sexuality. She took up her current position at the University of Leeds in 2018, having previously worked as lecturer in museology at Newcastle University and a peer reviewer for the Journal of Museum and Society. Do I have Maki and Gil with me? Hi, Maki. I can see you here on the screen. How are you?
I'm okay. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. The US, we have moved to Paris and now to Leeds. So it's very exciting. Okay, so I'm going to let you have the screen and then let you do the presentation.
Sure. Thank you for them to share the 15 minutes. And I'm going first. So I have my clock here, but so I think I know when to stop, but if I don't stop, somebody needs to wave and I will stop. So thank you for that introduction and inviting to this roundtable. The two previous presentations are very exciting and I can see how our conversation can flourish.
Thanks, Maki. Okay, I'll try and talk quickly as well. I'm worried I might go over. So yeah, I mean, I came into the university, as was said in the introduction, having a curatorial background, working with an organisation called Pavilion. Pavilion was established actually by some students from our school in 1983 as a feminist photography centre. I wasn't born at that point, but I ended up, after my studies at Leeds, working for the organisation. And the organisation was no longer kind of identified as a feminist photography centre, but was a contemporary art commissioning agency. But in 2013, as part of our 30th anniversary, we decided it'd be interesting to kind of return to feminist history. So discovered that the archive was housed at the University of Leeds as part of an archive called the Feminist Archive North, which kind of operated in some ways kind of independently from the university, but had been is hosted and increasingly kind of incorporated into the university's special collections. And so a link I see with CIVAS is that it was a, part of Pavilion's archive is part of a set of collections that's trying to that's documenting a kind of art history of our local place of Leeds, and I would say a kind of radical political history. The pavilion material is not digitized, it's only very loosely catalogued, so it's necessary to look through all of the boxes. There's no siloing that happens, there's no cataloguing, it's just a collection of uncatalogued material. So what we wanted to do as a visual arts organisation was try to make sense of the material and interpret it and disseminate it for a public. So the strategy we used to do that was to work with an artist called Luke Fowler. Quickly, hopefully you can see that. That's some archival material pavilion, and this is one of the film stills that was kind of documenting the process of looking through the archive. So, I mean, one of the things that we discovered was the archive was very incomplete. It was, you know, just a very fragmented representation of the history of this interesting organization. And so what we did was then kind of spoke to lots of the people who were originally involved and tried to document some of the intangible history that Emily was pointing to was very important, and produced a series of oral histories which became part of the archive and which also became part of the film. And so what we ended up doing through this kind of process of engaging with an artist was building the archive, digitizing kind of a series of oral histories, and disseminating knowledge about the organization, which in turn kind of pointed people towards this important resource. And I guess what I want to say is that a kind of concept that I found useful in thinking about how to animate and interpret a somewhat marginal, incomplete, little known archive has been Stuart Hall's concept of the living archive, which came out of a conference in 1996 in Britain, which was called the Living Archive Conference. And what Hall argues is that living in the sense of the archive means that the archive is present, ongoing, continuing, unfinished, open-ended, as opposed to tradition, which he describes as being a kind of prison house of the past. And so I guess what I wanted to say was that the concept of the living archive has been a kind of animating concept for me in my teaching about archives at the university. And I run a module called Adventures in the Archive, 30 credit module, where we kind of address the archival impulse in art practice, which can be seen kind of at least in Britain and parts of Europe, I think, through a kind of abundance of artworks and exhibitions and events since around the 1990s, which have taken the archives as kind of material. So we ask in this module, how are artists and curators unsettling our ideas of what an archive can be? What questions do they raise about our relationship to archives, to our understanding of why archives exist and what they exist for? And I suppose what we do in the module is kind of focus on various kind of hidden, less visible, erased, marginalized histories, and think about how artists are kind of intervening in those to make archives live. So kind of thinking about this concept of living archive in lots of different ways. And so just a couple of examples, we look at Walid Raad's The Atlas Group project, which I'm sure many of you know is an archive of artworks produced by Raad in response to the Lebanese wars. And what he does is kind of constructs these objects and attributes, dates and invented figures who are said to have donated the works to the Atlas Group. So really thinking about kind of fiction as one strategy for producing a living archive. We look at particular exhibitions, such as the recent exhibition, The Places Here, which documented Black British art history, and the way in which archival material is used within exhibitions to kind of make a more discursive social space, kind of moving away from the exhibition as spectacle. And we look at animate archives through particular kind of events and discussion. So, for example, the Women of Colour Index at Goldsmiths, which is establishing a kind of long-running reading group to really sort of look at documentary material of previous art histories and talk about it in relation to kind of current political events in archive, really sort of motivating the kinds of archives that we're using as teaching material, but also the assessment. So we ask students then to produce a kind of creative intervention, some kind of archival intervention that I guess is thinking about how to use creative strategies to make the archive live. And this is something that I think we're interested in the school, is how to kind of bring practice-based forms of assessment into, kind of, we do have studio courses, but into our kind of art historical and theoretical programs. And because I think what it does is kind of empower students to kind of think about the sorts of changes that they want to go out and make in the world, and the sorts of archival interventions that might be open to them. So I'll leave it there. I'm sure I'm out of time. But yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Maki and Jill. That's very interesting. Again, and I guess it's also because Fahad certainly has a more parallel to the Faculty of Art and Design here at ITB. And it is true also that we are concerned with how CIVAS archive collections can be embedded in different courses to keep them alive, as what you said. This year, I'm actually taking a part in a research with Dr. Agung Hujatnika, I think, who is probably present here as well, where this is like kind of like an exploration to embed the CIVAS archives on an Indonesian artist, Haryadi Suwadi, to the students in the art studies class and in different classes and courses. And it's really nice to kind of like see that that we, in this sort of like exploration, we're not alone. So yeah, thank you. It's very encouraging to listen to your presentation. And so I'd like to take you closer now with our next panelist, closer to Indonesia, where we are right now. I'm going to introduce Roshan Mishra. He is the director at Taragaon Museum. I hope I pronounced it well.
Yeah, you did.
And a visual artist based in Kathmandu. He manages the Nepal Architecture Archive, NAA, which is run by the Sara Foundation for Himalayan Traditions and Culture. And a patron organization of Taragaon Museum. Since almost last 8 years, he has been affiliated with the museum and have been working with its permanent collection, launching of the contemporary art gallery, and creation of an archive and a library. Roshan is the founder of Global Nepali Museum, Nepalian Art, and an initiator of the Mishra Museum. He is a visiting faculty at the Kathmandu University, Art and Design faculty for research, documentation, and archiving programs. He studied fine arts in Nepal, Japan, and in the UK, and holds a master's degree in digital art. And Roshan is now actively involved in the campaign to bring back Nepali lost and stolen heritage. Hello, Roshan.
Hi.
How
Hi,
are
everyone.
you? So where are you at the moment? Are you at Kathmandu?
Yeah, I'm in Kathmandu at my home.
Okay. So is it already in the evening?
Yeah,
right
it's
now?
evening 7:15. So we just
7:15.
Yeah.
Okay. So only 2 hours of difference. Yep.
True.
Indonesia. Okay. So I will let you do your presentation.
Okay. Thank you. Give me 1 sec. So it was quite interesting for me to hear from all the previous speakers, Emily, Chon, Mike, and Gil. And it's just amazing that, how all these archives are working from very, very long time. And here at the Kathmandu University, we're trying to establish an archive to kind of preserve Nepali art history, Nepali history of Nepali art institution, and probably the personal history of Nepali artists. So I just want to go through some of the things we are doing. We are very, very new. Kathmandu University was established in 1996 as a university, and that's the same time they started the fine art courses. but at that time they had a very small library and there was no archive. And 20 years down the line, we still don't have any archive. So in 2018, we faculty members, we got together and we thought, okay, this is the time that we should really start thinking about archive and try to establish that within the university. So this is where it all began. So this was in 2017 when a flood happened in the Kathmandu University. And at that time, there were a good amount of books, artworks, and archival material collected, but they all were lost at that time. And that time was kind of a starting point for us to kind of start rethinking about, creating Nepali, Nepal-related materials and the archival materials within the university. So this is how it began. This actually really made us think about the need of the archive. And at that time, everything was lost. We salvaged very few material, and we had to kind of start it again. And in 2018, this is how we kind of started. It was very few materials that was salvaged, and most of the materials were lost. So we are thinking, how shall we start collecting the materials that we need for students and also for the faculty members? Because there was no other art institution who were kind of preserving Nepali art history and information about Nepali artist institutions and the art initiatives that was taking place in Nepal. So just to come back to my involvement, I think it was briefly mentioned in my bio as well when I was introduced. But these are kind of the initiatives that kind of helped us to kind of start rethinking about the Kathmandu University Art Archive, because we don't have any experts within Nepal and we had to start it somewhere, right? So with my own experience with a couple of other, physical archives and the online database and the digital database that I was involved in, we started to kind of manage the materials that we have within the Kathmandu University in the same kind of manner. So we were envisioning about a physical archive, but we also wanted to go digital. But it was a very, very challenging, idea that we were involved in. So the idea is basically, as I mentioned before, to kind of start documenting about Nepali art, artist, institution, art history, and all those sort of things. What was happening in the past is like we have a couple of universities, they have libraries, but none of the universities, they have any archives. And what was happening is, because we were very much focused on Nepali art at the Kathmandu University, and students wanted to kind of study about Nepali artists, art movement, and the materials these artists have produced over the period of time, but there was no access. It was very, very difficult for the faculty members to kind of start talking and communicating with the students about how we should access these materials. So the only possibility was for us to kind of start envisioning this archive where we can collect these materials and bring it to one domain which could become accessible for the students and also for the faculty members. Because, there are so many personal archives, every artist, they have their own archive, every institutions, they have their small archive. And even in, private collections, there were materials, but there were no access. So how could we kind of bring that all together in the Kathmandu University and create that institution as a hub of Nepali art-related materials and archival materials? So we started working with students, and what we did was when we started training the students, most of the time what was happening is I was basically talking with them about the institutions I was involved, because what was happening is Kathmandu University was not fully equipped, but some of the institutions I was working with, they were equipped and they were was a structure, set structure. And that was kind of a starting point to kind of collect materials. But this particular image I'm showing you here is basically the drawings that was produced by the first sketch artist of Nepal. And it was produced in mid 1800. And these are kept at the Royal Asiatic Society in London. But when we try to look at these materials, we don't find any information even about these materials here in Nepal. But our students were busy, studying about Picasso, Rembrandt, and Van Gogh. So what happened in that particular year is 2018. We kind of stopped students to start, researching about the foreign artists or the artists from the West, because it was not helping us to create an archive or create those research materials that was actually needed by the students and the faculty members. So what we did was we banned them almost to kind of research about these Western artists, and we encouraged them to kind of study about Nepali art, Nepali artists, history, and the Nepali art movements. So what was happening after that is all these students, what we did was all these students were kind of involved in collecting the materials and digitizing it. So what happened was, in every semester, students were given a theme or a title, and they started looking for materials from different sources. They were visiting art institutions, they were visiting artist house, and they were looking for the materials that they could bring to the Kathmandu University, and those materials kind of became a part of the archive. So what we are also doing is we were obtaining a consent from the artist or that particular collector, to bring that material to the Kathmandu University and make it accessible to initially to the faculty members and to the students, because it was mostly needed for the students and the faculty members itself, right? So what has happened in the last 4 years since we started the archiving process within the Kathmandu University? All these students were engaged in the part of the research documentation and archiving course, started to collect materials and periodicals, there were exhibition catalogs, there were photographs, negatives, and whatever was actually given by these collectors or the artists from their personal collection, that started to come to the Kathmandu University archive. And that is how it began, because it was very difficult for us to acquire these materials. And then, because being in Nepal, it was going to be very, very challenging for us to start acquiring materials from artists and individuals. So the best option for us was to kind of assign students, make it a part of their research work, and they start collecting the materials for the university so that the university can use it, the future generation can use it, and any researchers and scholars, whoever want to kind of study about Nepali art, history, and Nepali art movement, can actually come to the Kathmandu University and go through the materials. And it started becoming a point where all these art and started looking at these materials. One of the things what was happening through this process is like, when we materials coming, but most of them, they were coming as a Xerox format. So what the students were doing is they were scanning these documents, they were, they were copying these documents, they were creating inventory, and they were adding it into the Kathmandu University archive. And that was the only way we were able to kind of make these materials accessible. So there was a part of a physical collection, and there was also a part of the digital collection, but both are still at the moment only accessible to the students and to the faculty members only. So what has happened during the last 4 years is we have got lots of periodicals, lots of newspaper clippings, lots of written documents and articles that started coming to the archive. And what we have done is we have started annotating them, we have started scanning them, and all these informations are actually now becoming a part of the Kathmandu University archive, and it is being used by the faculty members and also by the students. So lots of different materials which was never seen before and was never accessible to the students and the faculty members had started, to show up within that collection during the collection process. And that has kind of created a good amount of materials for the students to kind of start, learning about the Nepali history and the Nepali art and the Nepali art movements. So at the moment, what is happening is we are not software based. We are basically Excel sheet based, and we are capturing all those information in an Excel sheet. And that is how these materials are actually managed at the moment. We want to go on a software, and we are talking with different organizations and institutions, and that may happen within the near future. So, during this process, what we have realized at the Kathmandu University is basically one of the most, needed factor was the training and the support mechanism, which was never there. And, after connecting with different institutions around the world, or after connecting with, different projects that was happening in Kathmandu about heritage, culture, and history, that has actually supported our process. So the material collection still very much dependent on students. We, as an institution, we are not able to kind of acquire any materials, but at the moment, what is happening is actually working for us. Digitization, we don't have any well-equipped labs where we can digitize these materials. And this is also being done by the students who are supporting in this process. The conservation and preservation, that is something I don't really want to talk about because that function is not there in Nepal. There are no conservation lab at all. So it's something we can't do anything at the moment. There are copyright issues when we start collecting materials. Some of the parts are actually covered by the consent letter we are creating, but there are still few issues that we have within our collection. Storage is a huge challenge. We are looking to create a physical archive as well as a digital archive. So that is we're restricted with many things. Database system, that is something I mentioned again, that we don't have any particular software that we're using. We are relying on Excel sheets. And the access wise, we want to go online, but at the moment it is only on site where people can come and look at these materials and study these materials about Nepali art and Nepali art history. So at the moment, what is happening is because we are not even, we are still crawling, we are not even standing, So what is happening at the moment is all the faculty members, the individual, the artists, the curators, and the students, they are the only beneficiary of this particular archive at the moment, because it's very much in a work in process at the moment. And once I start hearing what is actually happening out there, it is quite amazing, how other archives around the world are working. And where, when I compare what is happening outside, we are in a very, very scratch stage at the moment. So thank you very much for listening to this small presentation.
Thank you very much for the very insightful presentation, Roshan. It's really exciting to see how archiving can become sort of like activism on its own, and it's become like a resistance to what Maki perhaps in the previous session mentioned as universalistic kind of like view of art learning. And I mean, like I'm also I agree definitely that retracing our own history can really be beneficial in establishing our identity in the world rather than following the trend and all that. Thank you. So very, very insightful for me personally. Before we begin our discussion, we have our very own Dr. Kiki Rizky Sutisna Putri, without whom this roundtable and literally round the world, not only roundtable discussion would not have happened. So Kiki Rizky Sutisna Putri is a lecturer and a researcher from the Aesthetics and the Sciences of Art Research Group, Faculty of Art and Design ITB. Her research relates to the study of and analysis of methodology on Indonesia's art practice after the 21st century, 2000, sorry. It's already late at night here in Bandung, so kind of like my brain is a bit fuzzy, focusing on the relationship between art objects and artists' awareness in the social environment. She now teaches artistic methodology, art review, and final reports writing supervision. And CIVAS, the Center for Indonesian Visual Art Studies, was started with her colleagues and herself in 2017. And she now lives and works in Bandung. Okay, hi, Kiki. So I think because we're so close, then if you turn on the mic, there will be echo. So I'm not going to greet you like any other speakers. I'm just going to let you do your presentation. Take it away.
Thank you, Ibu Ari. Thank you, Ari. Hello, everyone. I am really excited right now that I could jump from my chair right now. I'm also nervous at the same time to be here with you guys, Emily, with Maki, with Gil, with Chongdai, and with Roshan. I am nervous because I already know your initiatives, your knowledge, and I hope that CIVAS can learn from what you have already built. So about 4 years plus ago, Ibu, I have to mention this name, Pak Aminuddin Siregar, Pak Ucok, before he headed to study at Leiden University, have this kind of long time obsession to build an archive center here at ITB. But he have to go to Leiden to study. So that was Bu Irma and me in charge, and we started with a proposal to build the infrastructure. At that time, especially me, I did not have any archival background sort of thing. So that was kind of brand new knowledge for me. I remember at 2018, I contacted Asia Art Archive and said, I want to learn. And that was the first time I met Chongdai. And all the learning process brought us here. Okay, I will start my presentation with a short introduction about CIVAS. Let me share my screen first. I almost forget to share my screen. Sorry. So, this is our roadmap. Since 2017, the Aesthetic and the Sciences of Art Research Group, Faculty of Art and Design, Bandung Institute of Technology, has started a digital archive repository project named CIVAS, or Center for Indonesian Visual Art Studies. This is our roadmap. We initiated a documentation project called Bandung School Documentation Project in 2018. So the materials, I hope, will be our special collection. the collection divided into 3 periods: the 40s, the 50s, and the 60s. So unfortunately, I don't have any preview from our archive, but Danu here in front of me that are responsible to the collection, and he also helped me a lot with the presentation. So thank you, Danu. We are also have planned to expanding our project to collect Indonesian art archive through international networks. We hope that we will be able to connect with other institutional networks that's similar to ours. So we plan to open for public in 2025. So this is the brief explanation, and yeah, the background. I will start with this article titled "Digitalizing Knowledge, Education Libraries Archive" from Kathleen Azali. She highlights 2 aspects that shape libraries in Indonesia and archive in Indonesia. So according to her, besides the climate problem that caused the natural damage to a specific archive medium, Azali analyzed that and highlights the socio-political precedent of library activities and archiving as knowledge construction. So in addition, the complexity of archiving activities in Indonesia is also shaped by geopolitical conditions and language diversity in many tribes, especially in the classification of standards. Another problem, according to Azali, also significantly shape archiving activities in Indonesia is the low interest in reading and the culture of archiving, which result in the lack of awareness of the preservation and science through this activity. In addition, Azali also highlighted the lack of funding, archiving material resources, human resources, and the absence of experts. But that kind of unique background also creates and form unique activities. So this is IX Bandung. According to the perspective about the nature of archiving in Indonesia, we can notice that Bandung, as well as other cities in Indonesia in tropical environment, have relatively high temperatures and humidity. This climatization aspect has emerged as a major problem in archiving. Although it's formed a unique activity, but it is a massive issue. Digitalization have been considered as significant solution according to these environmental issues. So I will, according to another article from Jurians and Tapsel in 2017, that digitalization technology is that's in that sense also becoming the core of life, work culture, and identity in Indonesia. So it also produce unique activity, especially in Bandung. So that background became our consideration in mapping what we could and what we possibly do in CIVAS, especially to our own archive, our school history in it. So what we do in our digital platform, we're trying to preserve and disseminate the knowledge from our existing archive. We are very conscious about how we preserve and how we disseminate it. We preserving the existing archive in our campus and also in the donors state with the digitization process. So we transform all the archive from format to the digital, yeah. So we hope that it become more accessible. I already mentioned before that we also conduct several exhibition and public lecture to disseminate knowledge. So CIVAS has to main function here, preserving and disseminating. So, along with all the process of learning and doing brought us to this question: does the digitalization is a significant solution? Yeah. I think Chongde already mentioned about the dilemmas faced by digitalization process. So digitalization and also face dilemmas and paradox. Digital media more accessible at one side, it's space and cost efficient, but it also ephemeral at the same time. It depending on what it called technology sophistication. When it comes to digital media, we face paradoxical situation. On one side, it converts the data into more accessible form, but on the other side, it requires some specific decoding technology to be obtained. It has high dependence on technology sophistication, and it's very, very expensive. So this is according to Chan. That the situation has created a tension between context creation activities and their access and use. And this has become a major challenge in digital archivic research and efforts. This can be overcome by analyzing needs related to the context, format, context, storage media, technology system, workflow processes, and media metadata policies. But this is theoretical, yeah. In fact, we are faced with much more complex problem. For example, related to the access permission, Roshan already mentioned before, security of data use, and so on. These things are then taken into our consideration in performing archiving activities, and this also makes the process very slow. So digitization and digitalization are, as a business process, is the logic consequences of technological advancement. Digital platform provides possibilities for people to share information, no exception to knowledge and academic database. CIVAS trying to maximize the digitization and digitalization to contribute in society. CIVAS also, as activities, has two main functions, not only collecting and disseminate knowledge to the academic community and the general public, but also institutionally building organizational memory through the collection. So this is our kind of basic regulation. At CIVAS, we are trying to maximize the information technology, I already mentioned before. We are lucky to have, until now, fully support from ITB. This far through research and community service and innovation program. And this year, we are also received 2021 National Research Priority Grant from National Research and Innovation Agency of Indonesia. So we have been built our main server to support our new website coming up. I hope we'll be ready in 2025. Yeah, again, Danu and his team in the progress to set up all the metadata. So wish us luck. We also conduct context circumstances through research, exhibition, and public program. We also have this concern how the content are created and in what sense the digitization is needed in some particular data. The establishment of CIVAS at the first place is to support various researchers of Indonesian art studies, which the availability of data or archive has often constrained based on previous need and background, considering the particular CIVAS position in academic and educational institution. We are trying to make the system that could be more conceptualized and responsible, especially in terms of studies and legal, also ethical aspect that in the use of digital archives. So we plan to be semi-open digital archive repository in the first place. Thus, not all digital archive can be seen online by the public, but some must be accessed on site with an appointment. So this basic regulation is essential to respect our resources and donors that the archives will be digitized. This is expected to be encourage the interaction and exchange of information between researchers, public and academic or campus with the archives owner and also donors. That was me at Ade Pirus Estate, doing some scanning to his thesis from 1964. So this is our position and status. We are part of, sorry, I have misspelled, a state institution, a state university. So the consequences of CIVAS as part of a state university can be divided into at least three parts. So we have the unique privilege that CIVAS can have facilities by utilizing what is already exists in campus. We have also privilege to networking effortlessly because it carries the name of the campus. And CIVAS continuity tends to be maintained, and we have until now luckily stable funding. But also the thing to watch out and can be a limitation that not completely independent. So the movement is less dynamic because it's coincide with the other concern in the institute. So we have the responsibility to accommodate and campus vision and mission. We have limited personnel and staff recruitment. The amount of funding is very limited actually, so stable but limited. There are less freedom to seek outside private funding. And the issue that we think about in the future is how to come to be more compromised, the anticipatory with campus policy dynamics, and become of part of the institution that still has a dynamic movement. So I have 3 more minutes, so I will jump into this. Yeah, this is what CIVAS, as the part of state institution, university, that we are as our archive and art study center. We have role preserving and creating knowledge, but we also part of the academic organization that administrative function to create organizational memory. It related to data and archive owned, both physical and digital, which are stored and collected for purpose of knowledge, preservation, and historical value. Also related to what organization wants to give to the community and science itself. It's also related to the readiness of organizational data. Also related to the the institutional memory later on give us a reflective gesture. I think it's the very important part. This is our reflective gesture, what I said before, the true institutional archive. The Bandung School can be seen and interpret what was happened since 1947 until today. This backward reflective attitude can become the ideas to formulate what we must done in the future. It can be adaptive or innovative at the same time. So yeah, the institutional position in historical context, that what we are, that's the main goal of this project. So this is the illustration of what we have done. Collecting, preserving, and disseminating, also contributing to the Bandung School, also to the Indonesian part development. Due to the limitation of time, I think this is all the references, and this is the this is us in Galer Sumarja. I hand it over to Bu Ari. Thank you. I will stop.
Thank you very much. I think as the host, CIVAS has more questions and concerns that they would like to explore with all of you. And I guess one of the main thing is, being an entity in between two identities can both be more challenging and also dynamic, and with all the limitations and a lot of considerations, I think for what's going to happen in the future, we can bring forward, I think being in between makes us feel restless, but it's energy. Restlessness is energy. It can be negative or positive. It really how we respond to it. And now that we have heard from all the panelists about the works at each institution and organization, as well as the problems and concerns, we can start the roundtable discussion, I guess, where we're going to explore some of the issues in archiving, as well as conserving the archives and perhaps preserving knowledge within them. So we are going to go around. If one of the panelists would like to go first, of course, you can kind of like open the mic and start answering the questions. If not, then we'll just go around as how we did the presentation. So it's definitely how we're gonna play it by ears. So we're going to start with the first question, which is a very basic, because we've seen it all, and I think we've seen all the presentations organizations that there are common issues and that we can find, but I would like to see priority, and that the priority of the list of the problems that you are facing right now at your institution or organization. Okay, so maybe we can start from Emily, perhaps.
Sure. I'm sorry, my computer cut out just when you asked the question.
Oh,
could you
okay.
repeat it, please?
So I was wondering, like what is at the top of your, list of problems in archiving in at CIDO right now at the moment?
Sure. I would say right now our top priority is securing some kind of stable funding for the future. So CIDL has largely been funded through grants, which, as generous as grants are and as wonderful as the project has been up until now, it hasn't allowed us to plan very effectively for the future, because even something like hosting, having the money to make sure that the website can stay online in 5-10 years isn't always for sure. It's not guaranteed. And it's very easy, I think, to take digital projects for granted because the internet is such a part of our life, but it actually takes a great deal of money and work to keep something like this running. So we're exploring different ways right now that that we can plan for that future. I think the worst thing that we could do is to spend all this money now putting collections online, and then it's for nothing in 5 years because we didn't have the sustainability planned at the time being. So that's our biggest challenge.
Yeah. Do you have that sort of like flexibility to, like grant wise to like to apply for maybe like a more private funding or you're kind of like, I don't know how the flexibility is.
Yeah, we do right now. So luckily, I mentioned this a bit in my talk, but we received a grant from the Henry Luce Foundation that was specifically for planning for sustainability. So my position was actually created by that grant. There was never a full-time employee for this project until I was hired just over a year ago. And so having someone in my position, and as well as a web developer, just thinking about this project all the time, working on it all the time, advocating it, has given us the flexibility for the time being to plan for that future. So I don't have anything to share yet as to what that future funding will look like, but at least we have the resources to take the time to figure it out.
And perhaps one more kind of like, I want to tease this out of you, perhaps. I don't know if it's appropriate or not, but like in terms of flexibility, do you also have the flexibility to monetize the the resource that you have, or is it something that you could consider?
So CIDL is an open access repository, so we'll never charge for it. It will always be free to use. So the funding has to come from elsewhere. It's one of our founding values, is that it will be free. So that wouldn't be a direction we'd go down, but there are other creative solutions out there that we're working on.
Yes. I mean, like, of course. And thank you for answering, and because it's I think it's something that we need to hear, I guess. So I think I'm gonna head over to Chongdai, if you could kind of like chip in, like what's like the top and the priority of problems perhaps in Asia Art Archives at the moment.
I would say there are two things for us right now. One is finding more space for the physical library. We have an amazing collection of ephemera, catalogs, brochures from Asia, and of course, monographs and books. And we don't have enough space for all of the material that we have right now. And And so that is something that we're working on in terms of finding more physical space that we can afford. The other thing in terms of the research collections is what I had mentioned as how to bring in social media and email. Right? We have a small staff, and so every time we think about bringing in something, it's like not an easy thing, because all of the researchers are managing several projects. And if you're working on contemporary art, then of course a lot of artists, art organizations, post on Instagram, Facebook, and all that. And so that is a conversation that we've been having in terms of, do we bring that in into the archival collection? And if we do, how do we do that? So, one of the things that we have been doing research on in the past few months is how to archive emails. So, I had talked about EPAD. This was something that our head of research, John Tang, had looked into. And so previously he was at the Getty Foundation. And so he was looking into various software that was available. And this was something that seemed feasible for us. And so we've been working with our colleagues on the IT team to do some trials, and it looks promising. I can't say right now it's what we'll go with, but this is something definitely that we have to do more research on and to see what we can do.
If I can kind of ask you to elaborate more on the issue of resources, of human resources, because I think that's also one of the common problems. Emily mentioned it earlier, and you said it as well. I mean, what is the situation around AAA? Is it that people are not interested in working in AAA, or is it the lack of funding, or
we're a small organization, and archiving, when you talk about archiving, it's not the sexiest thing. And so, it's not easy to raise money. As Emily, I'm sure, knows for her own organization. We do have various funding sources, but we're also working to diversify where those sources come from so that we don't rely on one particular source. We have many more projects that we could work on, but because of our funding issues, we can't work on as many projects as we would like. So we have an operational budget that we have to fundraise every year. And then for each research project that we work on, we also have to raise money for those projects. And so that's what I mean. And it's not easy. And so for existing projects, those budgets have to be renewed annually, with either available sources or with fundraising annually for those projects. And then each time the researchers propose new projects, those projects can't go forward unless we have funding for them.
Yeah. I mean, I would love to elaborate more, but I think that's the same question as, which comes first, egg or the chicken, the eggs or the chicken. It's very hard to kind of determine.
I think we all really love our jobs, and it's really exciting to be able to see the primary material when it comes in. And I have to say, for my own position, that I've learned so much about contemporary art in Southeast Asia and across Asia in the job that I've done, because I've been able to see these collections, not only the ones that I work on, but the ones that my colleagues work on, and now that, it's really exciting to be able to do original research. And so definitely, we want to be able to work on as many collections as we can, but financially, it has to be per project.
Ask or invite Maki and Jill to kind of like maybe chip in the discussion. I know that you would want to elaborate a little bit about your research, not research, course, Maki. Is there any kind of like how, you know, like what's when you have to identify the top problems?
So I think where I'm coming from is slightly different, but I think it's also related in the sense that it's hard to. So, for example, the course that I taught with Pauline, that was funded by Leverhulme, and that was because they liked this idea of not going beyond the national categories. We wanted to think about East Asia as a chunk of field. So Leverhulme was able to fund it for a year, and it was really beneficial to have an expert of Chinese contemporary art coming to stay with us and really figure out how we can possibly do this. But it's just a year. And after that, I've identified other potential collaborators who are in South Korea or in China, mainland China. But the funding for that kind of project, intellectual project, is very nation-based. So once I approach them, they are very reluctant to fund a project about East Asia. So that's been sort of my kind of big hurdle. How do I get money from someone who are interested in East Asia as a field rather than, you know, particular nation state? Yeah, I'll stop here.
Okay, Jill, would you want to add something to it, perhaps from the project at Pavilion or in Fahax?
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of the module that I teach, I mean, I guess the kind of challenge is how to sort of really evoke some of the kind of smaller and more kind of marginal, in the sense of under-resourced archives that we're trying to look at, how to kind of make them really sort of accessible in the classroom. I mean, we had the kind of particular problem of COVID last year that we couldn't go on any field trips, but at the same time that allowed us to kind of do some Zoom calls with people and sort of rely on kind of digital resources, which did kind of open things up. But I think it's just trying to kind of really, so much of what is an archive and the kind of politics of that archive is very difficult to kind of document or make visible, especially without many resources. So I suppose it's that kind of teaching question of how you kind of, within an 11-week structure, try to kind of find ways to make visible and make legible some of the kind of archives which are often so sort of idiosyncratic in the way they develop and individual. And so I guess that's a question for us. I mean, I think as a school, like we've, you know, it may not seem immediately sort of relevant, but I think we're kind of working, both Maki and I are interested in the fact that, I'm concerned by the fact that the school doesn't have very much diversity in terms of its staff team, and the thinking about the impact that makes on the kinds of subjects that are taught and the experiences that are shared with students. And as a result, our student body is also not very diverse, particularly in terms of race. So this is something that I guess we're sort of thinking about in our teaching, but kind of recognizing the sort of limitations that being a mainly white staff team kind of has in terms of what we're giving to students in terms of a quality of experience. So
I was wondering, like, if you were as excited as I was listening to Roshan's
I'd love to hear more about that. It's completely sort of like giving me so many thoughts about exciting ways to teach. I think producing an archive through teaching is just such a compelling project, and I mean, I'd love to hear more about that.
So and I'd like to there you go. I'd like to invite him to the discussion, and you know, and perhaps, like if you have any, because I think, we're facing different challenges where I guess right now you have abundance of materials untouched, and it's exciting, and I don't know, I don't know, like what's like the main challenges for you. I know that you would want to kind of like bring back all the archives that are right now collected not in Nepal, um, and I think that will be like a big challenge for now. But like, how are you? Yeah, how are you kind of like, where are you in that?
Yeah. No, I think on my presentation, I probably only talked about challenges only. It was it is that situation. It is the reality. But having said that, there is a fun part attached to it as well. It's as I mentioned in my presentation, it's basically initiated by the faculty members that the need of archive. And we were just figuring it out how we can actually start collecting materials. If that doesn't happen, that means in the next 10 years, I think students will be in the same condition as they are now. So how can we change this scenario? And that is how kind of we develop that, okay, we will work with the student, we'll teach them a process how to document, digitize, and manage the archive. But at the same time, we'll also utilize them to collect the materials. And it actually worked very, very well. And you talked about challenges. I think there are many challenges, but one of the challenge I see is basically we need to somehow migrate in a digital database. If we keep on creating Excel sheets for every single objects and every single materials, that is going to be a tedious job. And the migration of that data from Excel sheet to a software, it's going to be a nightmare. So the sooner the better, we need to find a solution how we can go online and we can use a digital platform. Because what I'm foreseeing is in the next 5 years, we'll probably end up collecting another 20,000 objects, right? And the materials. And if we start, if we rely on the Excel sheets, that's not going to take us anywhere. So I think, if I have to prioritize what I need to do at the moment is the digital platform. The software is definitely required. Recently, currently, I think the AAA Hong Kong, they have been doing a mobile library in Nepal, and we have been involved with them. And then they did some workshops with the Kathmandu University faculty members as well. And then we are talking with lots of different people, lots of institutions, and trying to figure out how we can do this. In the same way, we're working with the German organization DAAD, and we're working with a project called Space to Places, where we are actually documenting, spaces and people history. So through these projects, more documentation will be created, more archival material will be created, more digital materials will come. At the moment, we all are going crazy about, digital material. We all are talking about visual anthropology. Once these materials are collected, then that is going to be quite a big challenge. So before we reach that situation, so I think the most important thing is for us is to kind of find a platform which will be suitable for us to kind of migrate it ASAP. Otherwise, this whole process is gonna, be very, very difficult for us. And in the other hand, what has happened now is, as it has been initiated by the faculty members, the university is actually very keen on supporting us as well. So they need to figure out a mechanism how they can convince, local people, artists, donors, private collectors, how they can actually donate their personal collection to the university so that the university can keep these materials for another 50 years. So they need to show some sort of commitments, and the material will start coming. So material is there. There's not an issue. That is not an issue at all. It's just that access is not there. these are the two main priorities. One, the digital platform. The other thing is the university needs to play a very, very proactive role, how they can actually, reach out those donors, individuals, local people and other institutions to kind of donate their material. So we need to somehow figure out this acquisition method, whether it's gift, whether it's donation, or whether that is acquisition, that is something we need to figure out. From my perspective, I think those are the two main challenges we have at the moment.
And it's I mean, like listening to talking about that, there's like also like an urgency to kind of like I don't know, I mean, like, are you suggesting that probably we could start a collaboration, but not only on the networking, but also perhaps like developing some kind of software or that we can kind of like that can be like a resource sharing sort of option.
We're talking with few of the local IT companies as well, if they can develop something for us. So that could be a good kind of a starting point, and this, once it goes in a software, it's very easy to migrate from one platform to another. So it's a digital file that you migrate from one to other. So that's not going to be an issue at all. So some of the material, the softwares we're looking at is like something like collective access, for example, and even something like we don't have resources who can actually use that or teach us how to operate that software. It needs resources, it needs budget, So I think there are challenges that we're slowly trying to identify and then make it happen. But it's a process, I don't think we need to rush it. But having said that, I told you that the university was established like 20 years back, and now we're thinking about archive. And when I listen to you all, you have got a properly working, accessible archive on place. You have your own challenges, but to reach that point, it will take us, a good amount of time.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Roshan, for sharing that. I wonder if Kiki would want to add, or we would want to kind of like open also the discussion, because there's still Ardeen is still here, and the head of our research group is still here. We want to kind of like invite them as well, Kiki, or?
Sure, I think of course. But I think I will add a little bit about what the challenge that we face right now. I learned a lot from Roshan actually. I knew Roshan from a webinar last year, I think, and that's very click at my mind, and I have to talk to this person. Our challenges is also related to our physical archive actually, that stored right now at the Gallery Sumarja, that we think also need special attention. But our biggest challenge are related to the space limitation and also lack of expertise. Lack of expertise to take care of all the physical material. At the same time, we are also challenged by the weather, the climate aspect that became our biggest nightmare. So Gallery Sumarja is the oldest university gallery in Indonesia, established in 1974. They already stored like a black and white photographs from campus event in 50s, and also some magazine, cultural magazine that published in 50s and 70s, academic documents in 50s, and letters, reproduction of Western maestro paintings, and so on and so on. So I think that's also what we are, what we're concerned right now. So digitization is the first attempt to preserve all the historical archive that already stored like 20, 30, maybe 30 plus years. until now. So yeah, maybe we could also ask Pak Rikrik and Bu Irma to join the conversation, but maybe you have something to share with us.
Yes, I think I would like to ask to Emily, because our alumni, Anissa Rahadi, who she has been graduate, I think 3 or 4 months ago, yeah. And then I've been experiencing that I have the research in Indonesia with her, and then when she was in Cornell University doing her PhD, and then we discussed about how to exchange data, and then somehow I'm not sure where is the Cornell Library digital sections, yeah, but there is my research material handed over, yes, and then there was document that we should sign. I mean, I should sign that it is handed over to the Cornell University collections. So that means that we have to prepare the let's say the law aspect, yeah, on this, because the property rights and so on, yeah. So on the other hand, in my experience in Indonesia, we have our seniors in our faculties who already retired, so who have a private collections, is very huge collections materials. So it is kind of, we need that collections, yeah, but we have to prepare something in property rights, yeah, for that. So what is your experience on that? Probably,
well, first,
yes, okay.
If I could share my screen quickly, I was actually just talking about Anissa's work with one of my colleagues. So I don't know if everyone can see this, but this is the Bandung Artist Collection.
Yes.
Yeah, so I don't work with this collection. This is a different part of Cornell, but it's here, we can browse it quickly. But it's a brand new collection that was grant funded through Cornell, and it's a wonderful, wonderful collection of artwork from Bandung. But as to your specific question regarding rights, that is a complicated challenge, and it's something that is different for every single collection that we work with. Whenever we put something online, we have to make sure that we have the proper documentation saying that we're allowed to share it. We also have to consider ethical questions, you know, even if we have permission to put this online, is it private? Is it on a sensitive subject? Maybe we have permission from the person who created the item, but not always permission from the people who are depicted in the item, especially photographs. So all of those questions need to be answered for every single item individually. And it's doubly complicated by the fact that we are a Southeast Asia digital library, because we want to make sure that we're following not just the law in the United States, but that we're following the law in Indonesia or Malaysia or Vietnam, and it's different in every country. So it takes a lot of time and a lot of effort, but it's something that has to be done for every single collection. I hope that answers your question.
Yes. Is there any experience for Chongdai in AAA about rights?
I would reiterate what Emily said. It's very complicated. All of our research collections have hundreds, if not thousands, of records. And so one of the collections I'm working on is the Lee Wen archive. Lee Wen was a performance artist from Singapore. He passed away a few years ago, but we were able to start working on his archive when he was still alive. Yeah, and so we do have his permission to make available his material online. So you can see like full photographs of his performances, for example. But we don't have permission to put online every artist's work, who you see. Sometimes we do, but like Emily said, it's a very time-consuming process. And so our default is to put the material on site access only. Yeah, I think one of the things that people often assume when it's a digital archive that it can be accessed anywhere around the world, but because of copyright, we have to respect that is not the case. And like Emily said, even when you do have someone's permission to put something online, it doesn't necessarily mean that that's an easy decision either, because Lee Wen gave us permission to put all of his material online, but like sensitive information or things of a personal nature, like say like financial records, or personal letters, those things we don't put online. Yeah.
I see. Thank you.
Okay, if Bu Irma perhaps would want to add to the discussion.
Okay, thank you, Ari. I think I feel so lucky today because I had so many shared experience today for the college here. There are many things that can be used as a lesson learning for developing CIVAS in the future. And I think what Ms. Kiki and Mr. Rick have said already represent what I want to ask today, especially regarding the copyright, because I think the copyright is very, very complex. Emily and Chuang Daifo's explanation illustrate how complex this problem is, especially in Indonesia, where the art infrastructure is not yet fully stable. I think I don't have any question yet, and I'm very grateful I'm joining this discussion today. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Bu Irma. Perhaps we can kind of like move on. I know that, like talking about challenges can be kind of like, well, there will always be challenges, and if not one, then the other. And we're gonna, we're always going to face different challenges because then we live in different realities. But I'm wondering, like listening to all the panelists today, if you could kind of like find a gap maybe in the current practice of your institution or organization, what are those? Like, can you identify any of the gaps in the current practice of your institution and organization? I think what I'm heading on to is that could that be explored through collaborations, perhaps within this panelists or within this panel, or maybe outside, like with similar institution or organization? Because I think, like that kind of like that could kind of put us in a future trajectory, kind of like you can see, like, oh yeah, well, there's this gap in my institution or organization, and like listening to others' presentation, maybe we could kind of like collaborate here or there. So yeah, I think I'm wondering about that. Should we go around again, or would someone want to talk first and respond to the question? Fine as well. Okay, if not, then Emily, sorry. You have to go first again.
No problem. A gap for us is definitely, and it's not the most exciting answer, but it's documentation and policy. So like I mentioned, I am the first full-time project manager, but the project CEDL has existed since 2006. And that means that all of the work done in the past, as incredible as it is, it wasn't standardized. So there was no single process for creating descriptions. There was no single process for, there's no workflow that was the same for digital projects, for choosing them, for creating them, for describing them. And so that means that everything is different. And I'm trying to work to create a single standardized system for projects into the future. This also creates a more equitable process for our partners. So no one needs to feel like they need to have a special in to make a collection. Instead, everyone can follow the same process and everyone knows how to start in the same place. It also makes things a lot easier when it comes to collection descriptions and metadata, so that we know everything is described the same way. It makes it easier to find errors, it makes it easier to find missing information, and it makes it easier for our users to look at one collection and then compare it to another collection, because everything follows the same pattern of description. So that's what I'm working on now. And hopefully, as we move forward, that will just ease the process for everyone.
Okay. What about at AAA? Perhaps, maybe there's gaps, which, a little different than the challenges that you mentioned before.
I would say for us, it's we try to keep abreast of the developments in the field. And so, for example, my position, I work on Southeast Asia, but this is a new position. So when AA started, it started as a physical library first. And then the research collections, I think that started in 2006. And being in Hong Kong, of course, the collections started with Hong Kong and China. And then we expanded to also looking at South Asia. And Roshan, you have been in touch with my colleagues about the Inter-Archives Conversations series that you were part of. And then had brought in some collections of Southeast Asia, but we recognized that we needed someone to focus on that region specifically. And so that's why I joined AAA. And so I think, one of the things that an organization, as it grows, is a healthy organization assesses what it is doing and what it isn't doing, right? And the other thing that I think AA tries to do is to always be in conversation with other organizations. And so, for example, the conversation series that Roshan was a part of in Inter-Archives Conversations is a program that comes out of one of our current program, Mobile Library, where we're collaborating with the Siddhartha Arts Foundation. And one of the reasons our colleagues decided to do this conversation was to, not just talk about what AA does, but to learn about what various organizations in Nepal and in South Asia are doing, to learn what are the challenges, because there are always specific, historical conditions, and every institution has its needs and its challenges. And so it isn't about coming in and saying, this is how you create an archive, but it's really learning about, what are the needs of a particular university or a particular nonprofit organization, how have they gone about it? And I think it's in conversations like the one that we're having right now that I find really interesting, that we can learn about each other's experiences and challenges, and in that also be able to exchange ideas and to learn.
Yeah, Yeah, I think like this kind of space, if we kind of like keep it alive somehow, would be also beneficial, I guess, in the future. Maybe Jill or Roshan would like to add to it. Go ahead, Jill.
Yeah, apologies, Mackie's had to go. So yeah, I'm sure she'd have said something, had something more interesting to say than me. But I think, yeah, I mean, I think there's always a gap, like in universities like ours, between the kind of, you know, we're a school within a faculty within a university, and there's kind of quite a big gap between what we do and what the kind of central university archive and archivists do. And so I think more joined up thinking and working across the people who digitize and manage and administrate and select archival material, and the people who are kind of working with that and devising teaching around it is needed to kind of, I think, engage isn't something I kind of thought that much about before we kind of got the provocation today. And so I think, yeah, thinking about how the archive can help students sort of understand where they are and the conditions that they're working in, I think is really interesting. And so, yeah, so more work, I think, to sort of join up across within our university. Gap, I would say.
Thank you. Roshan, would you like to add to the thought?
Yeah. I think there are a couple of gaps, but one of the gap that I'm kind of keen is basically in the last few years, main focus was collection, right? So we ended up collection. So that part has been taken care of. Having said that, it's a growing process, you know, it grows over the period of time. But during this process, what I felt is we have somehow missed to kind of activate our archive. You know, what that means is, like, I came from fine arts background. I'm an artist and I curate my museum, but that thing is not coming, you know. So what I meant is basically the collection, you know, and to give to the audience or to other institutions who may actually want to create archive like materials that we have and take it out in the gallery or even open spaces and talk about it, you know. Until you do that, I don't think, especially in Nepal, it doesn't make any impact. You know, like I meet so many students, so many faculty members, artists, they all like the idea about, you know, archives. But when you have to work in an archive, it's a completely different situation. I myself, like at the Taragaon Museum, I end up hiring an archivist every 3 months because they can't stay at all. You know, it's very, very difficult thing. But what is happening at the Kathmandu University is studying and growing our collection, but somehow we've missed how we can actually start utilizing the material we have collected. We want to see it as a project from a student. We want to see it as a research work from a space or an open space, so that the public can actually understand what Nepali history, art history is about, what Nepali culture, tradition, and heritage is about. So I think that but I think that is something we will probably make it happen, but it's a process. So far it hasn't happened, but we want to make that happen. And so we need to start talking, be visible to the public, you know, it exists, its existence needs to be visible. So that is the gap I feel currently.
an exciting collaboration happening between these three universities. Perhaps, I don't know if that could happen. ITB, Kathmandu University, and Leeds. Who knows? That's all very exciting. Bu Kiki, perhaps you would want to add?
Yeah, that's a good point about the activation. Yeah. But yeah, I already mentioned about how we are lack of expertise and that specific field. Yeah, we are not an archivist. We are all not archivists. We learning by doing. There are trial and error. We have to build our website twice. So at the first place that we think that something's very wrong and we have to rebuild our website. So yeah, we are maybe we can like some have a joint research, or maybe a visiting professor could help us to manage our our archive and to the activation of the archive through maybe joint research or something. So since we are not archivists, so we are more focused about the activation of actually. So we are trying to activate through like archive exhibition or research, or using the archive as a teaching materials, some kind of. But yeah, we have this kind of lack that we need to like properly archiving these materials, and also about the ethic in digital, like sort of. Like digital platform or something like that. So yeah, we have that gap of specific field at our campus.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Bu Kiki. And I think, because we have been over time, I guess, 12 minutes. Thank you very much for still staying with us. And so I have to kind of like wrap it up. I don't, I need to kind of like summarize, but I cannot kind of like deliver any conclusion, of course, because one thing that I've been witnessing here is that we have explored the practice of archiving, artworks and archiving art, kind of like text and in videos and all of it all of the medias all around the world, and found that we actually share similar challenges in funding, in systems to digitize or to store physical archives, and also issues regarding copyrights or authorship, ownership of the archives. And there are also kind of like gaps in the practice in different institutions that were identified during the discussion and with all of you. And I think kind of in one hand, on one hand, it made us, I think, feel not alone. Again, yeah, I'm just gonna kind of like highlight it. We're not alone, and also it in it's a hopeful situation that we can collaborate in the future to make exciting things happen, to activate actually the collections that we already have, or to come together and then to explore another challenge, and perhaps in the future, not through Zooms, but like through physical kind of meetings and workshops and all that, hopefully. And also I personally hope that we can kind of like do it not like in a rushed kind of way, just kind of, and be able to enjoy the process, because I think a part of archiving is that we need to kind of like to be able to enjoy the process. Whereas if we're rushed, and perhaps it wouldn't be something enjoyable to do, and maybe like what Roshan said, 3 months is too much, perhaps. We need to kind of like think of it as a nice marathon or a nice kind of like road trip, or just like a trip around the world, and hopefully we would have like the space and time to be able to enjoy that process. So I guess by that I'm closing the discussion and then ending it over again to our MC Sadira. Thank you very much, everyone, and I hope that the discussion has been also beneficial for all of you.
Okay, thank you so much, everyone, for your very generous attention. On behalf of CIVAS, the Aesthetic and the Science of Art Research Group, Visual Art Study Program, Faculty of Art and Design, Bandung Institute of Technology, please allow me to send our deep gratitude and see you again very soon. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you
everyone.
so much,
Bye.
everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Thank you so
Great to
much.
meet you all. Thank you.